Amid record low polling, a new projection shows President Trump's net approval rating is negative in 47 out of 50 states. According to The Economist and YouGov, Trump's net approval is minus 26. Then let's go state by state. The data shows widespread dissatisfaction with Trump, even in states that voted for him in 2024. Ahead of the midterms, Trump has a negative net approval rating in all of the states where there are competitive Senate races this year. Places like Georgia, where Trump's net approval is negative 31. North Carolina, it's negative 25. Maine, Trump's net approval is negative 31. Texas, negative 22. And in Michigan, Trump's net approval is negative 27. Not exactly what you want to see if you're Republicans vying to win in those states. It means they've got a lot of headwinds. But then add to that this: Republicans, ranchers, and beef producers are criticizing the president's plan to lower beef prices. The president on Friday posted that his administration will allow up to 300,000 metric tons of ground beef to be imported without higher tariffs over the next 90 days. The president's claiming the beef would be sold 25% under current market value, which is currently at a record high of $6.89 a pound. There was immediate backlash to this announcement. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association said in a statement that, quote, flooding the market with government-subsidized below-market beef is not the way to rebuild the American cattle herd. The group also said the move sacrifices long-term stability for short-term messaging. Multiple Republican senators also criticized the plan on social media, among them Tim Sheehy of Montana, who said that he's advised the president against this course of action for a year. Deb Fisher of Nebraska said flooding the market with foreign beef hurts our livestock industry and undermines the long-term solution. And Tom Cotton of Arkansas posted that imported beef will only put more pressure on cattlemen, adding he's also advised the president against the action and is now urging him to reconsider. The president was asked about all of it on Friday.
We want to get the beef prices down, so we'll get them down a little bit. And that's what people want. That's what the voters want. And that's what I want. The ranchers are great. They're my people. I love the ranchers. They've done a fantastic job. But they admit that we need a little help and in order to get the prices down. So that's what we're doing. I don't want to say which countries, but there are a few countries. But they're going to be sending in the highest quality beef. And it's something that we need.
Not only do we not know where the beef is coming from, the president didn't explain how it would be discounted or where the beef would be sold. This is yet another political problem ahead of the midterms. I want to bring in MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell. Michael, you are in South Carolina. We are going to get there in a moment just because the president was just there doing a rally for Darlene Graham in the closing days of that special election. But let's start here on not just the response from the American beef industry, but also farmers and fellow Republicans. I mean, the fact that you've got senators who are really never critical of the president coming out on their own accord on social media, I think says that this really hits a local nerve. All politics is still local, but I mean, this is a misstep from the White House. What do you think ends up happening here?
Yeah, Ali, one of the recurring themes throughout not just this Trump administration, but also the first Trump administration is how far congressional Republicans willing to bend to support whatever President Trump was pushing or advocating for at that moment before they start to push back. And the reason they would push back, if personally it was a problem for them or if it was a problem for their folks back home, we are seeing that this decision on beef imports is indeed too far for these Republican lawmakers. You just tick through a name, particularly three Republicans who are very closely aligned with President Trump. The name that stood out to me the most was Tom Cotton, the Republican from Arkansas, saying this goes too far. This is going to hurt cattle ranchers at home. Yes, it may be decreasing in the short term the price of beef for American consumers, but what about those cattle ranchers who are now going to have more competition in the workplace, but also at a much cheaper price? It puts more of a burden on them. So yes, this is a significant concern for these Republican lawmakers. It also hits on the affordability theme that we know is going to be so key to the November midterm elections. The question of what President Trump does right now, that's up to the White House. But it is worth noting that there was a similar instance to this back in May when the president had announced a similar idea involving beef, and then he pulled back on it because he had this swift outrage and backlash from Republican lawmakers in these farm states who have a lot of cattle ranchers as their constituents. So we'll see if he goes through with it this time around, but certainly this is a flashpoint, and it sort of helps us understand how far Republican members are willing to go. Well, when it hits folks' pocketbooks at home, particularly in this niche area like cattle farmers, that's too far.
it might be too far. We'll see. I'm also thinking of places like Iowa, where Ashley Hinson, the congresswoman who's running for the seat there, Joni Ernst's seat in Iowa, put out a statement saying this was a bad move. I mean, again, there are ripple effects in key elections. But I think the flip side of this, if you move away from the Republican outcry and into what the move signals, it's that the White House knows they have an affordability crisis on their hands, even as the president continues to go out and say it's a Democratic hoax and the other party created the term. And so I wonder what that says to you, because this is a White House that has tried to push the president onto that messaging. They haven't really been able to succeed at it because he is his own messenger and he does his own thing. But this does show, at least implicitly, that they know that there is an issue here.
Yeah, well, Ali, I guess within 3 months of Election Day would be any time as good for the president to start to understand that affordability is the name of the game when we're talking about these midterm elections. And you're right, it has been a journey to get here, from him saying, what is this idea of affordability? It's a hoax being pushed by Democrats. Now understanding that the cost of living is an acute concern of voters across the country. But of course, it's this equilibrium, right? And it's a very delicate balance that if you want to do something for the cost of living and for affordability, in this case, the president's deciding that the best path towards that is these beef imports. Well, that's going to upset some people across the board. And in this case, it's a key constituency of his, being cattle ranchers. And in this case, it's a constituency that's very important to some of his most loyal Republican lawmakers up on Capitol Hill. So yes, the president is understanding that he has a problem here with affordability, and he is proposing an idea to fix it, but it's not going to be a silver bullet, because if you do one thing, you may upset others. And we're seeing that play out right now. Certainly curious to see if he takes any more steps toward this affordability standpoint, again, as we are about 3 months away from those elections.
Yeah, there's always a balance. But I want to get to where you are in South Carolina, because the president was also there on Friday for a rally in support of Republican Senator Darlene Graham ahead of her primary runoff against Congressman Ralph Norman. That's tomorrow. The president acknowledged that not having his name on the ballot this year might hurt some Republicans, but he spent much of the event touting the economy and downplaying his war in Iran.
I had my first press conference, and they started screaming the word affordability. I said, I've only been here for 1 day. And they started screaming about, front row Joes know this, about eggs. Egg prices were up 4 or 5 times higher than they were a year before. And I said, I just got here. I'm here 1 day. And as soon as we're finished with the Islamic Republic of Iran, as soon as we're finished, oil is going to be down at lower than it was even just a little while ago. And the problem that we have is they say that Trump does great when he's on the ballot, but when he's not on the ballot, his people don't come and they don't vote for senators, congressmen, and other Republicans. And that these people, they're running, they're great, but if Trump isn't actually on the ballot. So what I really want you to do is pretend, please, that I'm on the ballot. Just come and vote. It's so important.
And look, Michael, the Trump endorsement is still powerful, but I think this is a key test of it, especially given the ways that Ralph Norman has been able to thrive in this primary so far. What are you seeing on the ground? What are you hearing from folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And Ali, I would just add to that. This is not just somebody who President Trump endorsed, Darlene Graham. It's someone who he encouraged to get into the race, gave that endorsement, and then showed up about 4 days before the runoff to stump for her. So there is a lot on the line for Darlene Graham, her entire political career, nascent political career at that, but also for President Trump, given that he handpicked her to run for this seat. Now, on the ground, we're hearing from some folks who are concerned about her lack of experience. Of course, the appointment to serve out the remainder of her brother's term, the late Senator Lindsey Graham, that was the first ever elected office she's ever held, and that was a concern in it of itself. But then we had that debate snafu last week when she said she was not informed on national security, a very large gulf from where her brother was, considering national security and foreign policy were his North Star. I've heard from some voters who say that's a concern and they're not yet sold on her candidacy because she doesn't have a proven track record of being able to get things done in Washington. But I've also heard from other voters who say, sure, she doesn't have that much much experience. A, she can learn on the job, and B, it's a good thing that she's not a career politician. She can come to Washington with a unique perspective and genuinely understands the needs and the wants of South Carolinians. So it right now is a mixed bag. I will tell you what's interesting about this race particularly is that Russell Fry, who came in third in the initial race about 2 weeks ago, he's endorsed Darlene Graham, and Mark Sanford, the former governor of South Carolina, he's endorsed Ralph Norman. So the big question in this race was, where do the voters for those supporters go now that their first choice is out of the race? The fact that there's a split there means it could be anybody's game, but this is going to come down to the voters deciding tomorrow, but certainly a very unique and unprecedented situation in so many ways. But Darlene Graham, Ralph Norman, head-to-head tomorrow.
Yeah, this is going to be absolutely fascinating. I'm glad that you're there on the ground. Take a nap, go get some South Carolina barbecue. It is, of course, the best. My colleague on Capitol Hill, Michael Schnell. Thank you.